Okay, so aid from the West has been jeopardized, as we all know. I'm pretty okay. And the aid from the US has been frozen by the Republican Party over squabbling about the southern border with Mexico, if I remember correctly. And to top it all off, Hungary has blocked aid from the European Union, 50 billion euro, and now the European Union is thinking of ways to push help in spite of Hungary, which will be 20 billion euro, which is less than half that was supposed to be given to Ukraine, which is, as you can see, that already is a big problem, right? That already is a big issue. But the US lack of help is just the last mm, aid package was given now, something over $200 million, I think. That's the last aid package this year. There won't be any more this year, and no new aid has been sort of approved. And it's questionable whether or not it will be because the Republican Party is pretty adamant on blocking things. We now will discuss something that's not talked about a lot because people usually talk about the immediate help that um, aid provides to the war effort, but there's another aspect to the whole aid thing that's sort of glossed glossed over or not really discussed at all. And that aspect is the fact that when a country is at war, it does not stop being a country. It has many different um, institutions that needs to be upkept, many different sort of social welfare and other benefits that need to be paid out to people. Society needs to try to function during war as normally as it possibly can. That's depending on the severity of the war, that has been a thing that always happened. Like it happened in Vietnam that people tried to function as normally as they can in the tunnels that were dug by the Viet Cong, you know. People gave birth in those tunnels, people got married in those tunnels, people sort of organized societies in those tunnels, if that makes sense. And so Ukraine, of course, is no exception. Ukrainian society tries to live as normal as possible during the war. But the problem is that since Ukraine's economy is sort of geared towards defending the country, a lot of the budget is allocated to arms, to producing arms. Ukraine has started producing its own drones and many other things. And so a lot of the funds are not allocated to things like paying salaries, to maternal leave, to paying people's um, retirement money. And if the West does not aid Ukraine financially, those benefits, like as I've said, maternal leave, like uh, retirement money, many people will not have their salaries paid because there just won't be enough money in the budget to do so. And that's a big thing that is at stake if the West just abandons Ukraine and does not provide any sort of help. And that's not talked about nearly enough because if society cannot function normally, if people don't get paid, if um, people don't get their retirement, if women cannot get their maternal leave money, that becomes a very big problem. And that, for example, will just create a huge, again, refugee crisis. People will just leave Ukraine to go to Poland, to Germany, to other places where they will receive those social benefits, where they will get those things. Because in Poland, Ukrainian people who come here and do things, who have children, do receive social benefits, for example, from having children, etc., etc. They get a special number assigned to them that Polish people have as well, and they will receive these benefits. So it's a really short-sighted strategy to just cut help to Ukraine, right? It's a very short-sighted strategy because, as Karasu has said in the chat right now, the European Union will have to pay eventually. And it will, of course, in some countries, inevitably, it will become a political ball for right wing demagogues that will say, hey, all those Ukrainians are coming here and they're draining our social welfare. Why are they doing this? Why are they Ukrainizing our country? They're just taking money from us. Blah, 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 blah. So it'll create just more problems down the line. Right? It'll just create more and more problems that could be avoided by, well, giving aid, which is crucial to the continuation of Ukraine as a society to function. We have a we have an article here. We've prepared it beforehand. Yeah, Hungary is like Hungary is the country that is blocking European Union aid. Orban, in particular. um, 50 billion euro was supposed to be given to Ukraine, and now the European Union is scrambling to give Ukraine 20 billion, which is a lot less. Yes, yes. If yeah, Poland does have a similar system to the for Ukraine. Yeah, I believe so. Yeah. The right-wing demagogues are also likely the ones to underfund these social programs. Thank goodness in countries like Poland, the right-wing demagogues don't have much say when it comes to giving Ukrainian people social aid. So, yeah, Orban, yeah, Orban, yeah. But by when I say Hungary, I don't mean Hungary as in the people and the country. I sort of mean the state, which is sort of represented by Orban. Orban represents the state, sort of. I mean, he does. He's the head of the state. Don't do what Dylan does, covering Hungarian video, associating that to all Hungarians. Oh my goodness. I will try not to do what Dylan Burns did. I will do my best not to do what Dylan Burns did. But yeah. Yeah, Dylan said Hungarians. Do I have to react to a Dylan Burns video talking about Hungary? We'll do it later, okay? We can criticize Dylan later. It's okay. It's fine. I'm not above criticizing other streamers. I already will have to call into Lonerbox and criticize him for his Holodomor take. It also shows that the West does not have a clear strategy. If we want to win the war, we have to actually put the effort in, not support in it a moralistic way. It's the difference of wanting to win the war to free Ukraine or wanting to prolong it to annoy Putin. Yeah, but don't count on them having all that good of a foresight. Destroying the Middle East was short-sighted too. However, as you've said, they can always shrug and resort to fascist demagoguery once the predictable happens. Yeah. Well, we need to educate him on Hungarian politics. We can do it today, right? Okay, we'll do it today. I'm gonna watch the video and we can educate him today. Although I don't think someone like Dylan Burns watches videos from someone like me. I think the scale difference is a bit. I'm not sure if Dylan Burns watches. I don't know. Stays up to watch 1,000 subscriber streamers talking about him. I'm not sure that's what happens. But I can try. I can certainly try. Where was I with all this? Ah, yes, we're gonna read the article. I'm gonna cut all of this out, and I'm gonna have to cut all of this out in editing. Ah, yes. European Union strategy. Yes. Okay, I do have to quote a really nice thing. I don't. We're gonna find out what Dylan did to the Hungarians. So there's a new Minister of Foreign Affairs in Poland called Sikorski, Radosław Sikorski, I believe. And he said something really nice recently. I watched it on the Polish TV. He said that we, the West, collectively are 20 times richer than Russia, but Russia can outpace us in production because they are in war economy mode. And if Europe just stays in peace mode, then even though we are 20 times richer, Russia will outproduce us because they are in the war economy mode, right? Does that make sense? We're 20 times richer, but it won't do us any good if we just stay in cozy peace mode and won't, really start to quickly start production, in other words, We need to switch gears to a bit more of a wartime economy as well. Europe as a whole, especially since it's 20 times richer. And support Ukraine. Produce weaponry and send it to Ukraine. I know Poland said that it will sort of become this safe hub of production. It will ramp up its weapons production. It will send it to Ukraine. But okay, let's read the article. Let's not dilly dally anymore. 2 million Ukrainian civil servants face salary cutoff if Western aid dries up. So that's basically what we're talking about here, right? An analysis by Kiev sent to its allies, to which El País has access, states that without the promised funds, a further million people will be left without social assistance. And the social assistance has been directly named. Like, as I've said, maternal leave, things like um, retirement, they're all in jeopardy. See? Elderly people are here. Ukraine needs the economic lifeline of its Western allies. Without a fresh injection of funds to keep the machinery of state running, Kiev, which has been at war with Russia for almost 700 days, and which devotes a large part of its budget to defense, which is pretty important, will be forced to leave up to 2 million public employees with unpaid salaries and further million without social benefits in the first quarter of 2024, which is an additional problem because should it create a refugee crisis, not only a flood of refugees will enter the European Union, but potentially Ukraine will be deprived of public employees. And how is the country supposed to function without those public employees exactly? You are you starting to see the problem? Are you starting to see the problem here? I think the problem is starting to become more and more apparent, right? These are the conclusions of an analysis of the country's financial situation sent by the government of Vladimir Zelensky to the United States, the European Union, and other Western allies, and to which El País has had access. Ukraine has urged Washington and Brussels to move forward with aid packages totaling some 110 billion, which remain frozen and pending approval due to political friction in the US Congress and the European Parliament. So we have 50 billion from the European Union and 50 something billion, 55 from the US. The 55 billion has been frozen in the US. The 50 billion in the European Union has been frozen as well. And the European Union is scrambling to give Ukraine just 20 billion should Orban stay course and keep blocking aid. They're streamlining production in Russia, much of it to the detriment to the Russian economy and the citizens. The reality is that Putin has set his sights farther than Ukraine. He's explicitly stated that he wants to rebuild the Russian Empire. Whether he would be insane enough to invade Poland and thus start an official war with the EU is unclear. I mean, you never know. My mom already has panicked today saying that war will come to us and the Russians will kill us all, so on the phone to me. That is indeed a problem in the long war. However, if aid is not supplied, there will be bigger and more immediate problems. Yeah. But this is a big problem. Let's not understate how big of a problem this is. The European Union is already considering alternative formulas to ensure the economic support promised to Kiev in case efforts to persuade Hungarian President Viktor Orban to lift his veto on the 50 billion, 55.7 billion package are unsuccessful. That decision must be taken at the European Summit on February 1st, which is already very a big delay. Hello, Maha. In its analysis, Ukraine elaborates on the sensitive um, dis- disbursements that depend on Western support. The document stresses that taking into account the available resources and the performance of priority expenditures for the defense and security sectors, as well as the repayment of state debt, there is a risk of default of expenditures on the payment of salaries for more than 1.4 million employees of scientific and educational institutions, as well as for more than 50,000 people working in budgetary and state institutions. Maternity leave payments for around 700,000 people and another 160,000 people receiving low income social benefits are also at risk of going unpaid. You see? Now, this is a refugee crisis in the making. Like, if people don't get maternity leave, then what are they supposed to do? Are they supposed to starve? Right? They're probably gonna leave to the European Union, which will just create more issues down the road, right? Timothy Milovanov, president of the Kiev School of Economics, notes that Ukraine lost almost 30% of its GDP last year. According to data from the International Monetary Fund, IMF, due to the full scale war with Russia, the Ukrainian economy is resilient, but it is in a difficult situation. It is very war oriented. Milovanov, who served as Minister of Economic Development, Trade, and Agriculture from 2019 to 2020, and advises Zelensky's office, says via phone. Kiev has a raft of defense related economic activities and foreign aid packages coupled with the efforts of the private sector and the work of volunteers have kept the economy afloat to date. European funds are needed to maintain the economy. These would be for the state budget because currently all taxes go to defense efforts against Russian aggression, and that means there is hardly anything left for the rest, Milovanov points out. Added to this is the prospect of expanded conscription, as announced by Zelensky, whereby the Ukrainian army could draft up to 500,000 more recruits. That would also prove another cause of strain on the state coffers. If there is no funding, there will be an economic crisis, waves of refugees, and defense will be weakened, which will allow the Russians to gain ground. The Ukrainian economist says if they take too long, Ukraine will have to cover the budget deficit as a first step and cut spending even further, which will lead to social unrest and a macroeconomic financial crisis. So, the article also touches upon the fact that this will just create a huge refugee crisis. which will create issues within European Union of its own. Right-wing demagogues will jump on this. It'll be a huge mess if aid is not, like, Ukraine must receive aid. It's all very intertwined, how society functions and how it affects Ukraine's ability to defend itself. The European Union wants the special 4-year 50 billion package for Ukraine, 33 billion in the form of loans and 17 billion in grants to be part of a broader revision of the multi-annual financial framework, the EU's multi-year budget outline, which also includes funds to deal with the migration flows or boost competitiveness. However, despite the various calculations that have been considered, it has not been possible to persuade Orban, who did lift Hungary's veto for the EU to open accession talks with Ukraine, to agree to sanctions this amount for the time being. As backup plans, EU member states are considering disbursing the money through bilateral agreements via the macro financial aid tool already employed to provide assistance to Kiev, or through a formula with EU debt similar to the one used during the pandemic to provide support to member states, which would free up some 20 billion, 22 billion as reported by the Financial Times. This option, warns a senior EU source, is based on loans and would require parliamentary approval from several partners, which could delay the delivery of the funds, which could very well be, like, fatal. You know, any delay is something that Russia welcomes. Any delay is. I don't think I should have to say it. Any delay is just horrible for everybody involved but Russia. Kiev is increasingly concerned about further economic support from the EU and the United States, where some 60 billion pledged by President Joe Biden has been blocked by political infighting, mainly on the Republican side, as it faces the economic and social consequences of a protracted war. Russia is exploiting the delay in Western economic support to fuel the theory that the US and EU will eventually tire of supporting Ukraine. Those funds will not be able to change the course of events, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said Wednesday during a telephone press conference, as quoted by Interfax. That money is allocated to the detriment of EU economies, which are already going through difficult times. In Besel, a village on the Donbas front line near the Ukrainian fortress town of Avdiivka, where some of the heaviest fighting is taking place, Vitaly and Lena explain how they receive their pension every month through the public postal service, which, despite constant shelling, manages to reach many villages in the hottest battle zones. Vitaly, 72, receives a pension and an allowance of about 3,500 hryvnias, just over $92, for the time he spent as a liquidator of Chernobyl in Chernobyl. His wife Lena, 69, says she receives 3,000 hryvnias, $79. We don't know anything. We're afraid of everything, laments Vitale, who fears that he will no longer receive a pension. Luba Mikhailovna, a civil servant, is also worried about the budget cuts. We are resilient, and without the armed forces, Ukraine would not exist. But we also need help for the rear guard that keeps the country running, she says. The IMF has described the Ukrainian economy as resilient, but warned that the invaded country can only withstand a delay of a couple of months in receiving economic aid from its Western allies. As the war drags on, it puts pressure on Ukraine's public finances. IMF Director Kristalina um, Georgieva said in a statement, on December 12th, the IMF released a 900 million package for financial assistance. In addition, coinciding with Christmas, Ukraine received some 1.2 billion, 1.34 billion from the World Bank. Norway and Switzerland, which could provide a brief respite, as those funds are designed to support the government in social and emergency aid payments. Ukrainian Finance Minister Sergei Marchenko explained in a statement, it is not charity, stresses Jacob Kierkegaard, a researcher at the German Marshall Fund. For Europe and the US, it is a matter of strategic interest that Ukraine wins this war because if it is won by Russia, it will be a direct threat to several EU member states and therefore for everyone. Kierkegaard remains confident that Kiev will receive the aid packages, albeit belatedly. If Ukraine does not receive military and financial support, Russia will win. So there we have it. If Ukraine does not receive support, financial support, it won't be able to upkeep its civic structures. People will go unpaid, women will not receive maternal leave, the elderly will not receive um, money for retirement, and that'll just create a huge crisis all around. Refugee crisis, like unrest, like it's not good. It's just not good. And so we need to give aid as much as possible. And we also need to send weapons, but that's another topic altogether, of course. So if you've enjoyed this little segment, press like, subscribe, etc. You know what to do. We're done with this segment. We have two more Ukrainian segments today, actually.